Whole, meeting notice Tuesday, February 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice President Bears.
Present.
Council Curriello. Council Collins.
Present.
Council Knight. Council Scarpelli.
Present.
Council Say. President Morrell.
Present, 6 present, 1 absent. The meeting is called to order. There will be a meeting of the Medford City Council Committee of the Whole on Tuesday, February 21st, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the Medford City Council chamber on the second floor of Medford City Hall and via Zoom. The purpose of the meeting is a finance update, paper 22-604. The Committee of the Whole has invited Finance Director Bob Dickinson to attend this meeting. For further information, aids, and accommodations, contact the City Clerk at 781-393-2425. Sincerely yours, Nicole Morrell, Council President. So as the notice states, this is for a finance update from Director Dickinson, who we have here, and we have a presentation in our hands as well. I'm happy to hand the floor over to Director Dickinson unless any counselors have questions that they would like to start off with first. Seeing none, Director Dickinson, if you want to, do you have something to share on Zoom as well? It looks like you do. Okay. Give you a minute to get set up.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
I'll write it down. So I guess I'm sharing. Share screen.
Yeah, if you want to make Bob Kokos. He is under Y. Yeah, the letter Y. Councilor Carviallo, do you want to just repeat that? Just do you want to ask? Okay. Okay.
You should be able to share.
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to ask it just on mic. Like I just. Okay.
There we go.
We're just waiting for
Okay.
Bob to share his screen.
Usually just talk to people. I think it's that. Is that working?
There we go.
Okay. I mean, this is just here. Woohoo. Hi, Bob Dickinson, Finance Director, City of Medford. Can you hear me? Yeah, we always have this problem with the height thing. I don't like it.
It's something that you can just prop. Do you want to give him that mouse box? You can just prop it up on that. Yeah, box. All right, do you want to sit? Yeah, just sit.
No, it's easier this way. We could just, oh, look, he's got the mic. No, it's okay. I just had my hip replaced. It's not a big deal.
You're supposed to get moving on that though, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Are we on? Yes, we do appear to be on. All right. No, it's fine.
If you need it.
If I have to sit, if we go more, I have to move around every hour. So in any event. Yeah. You know, it was a few weeks ago. The cane is mostly for balance to make sure that I don't fall over, because if I fall over, they have to do everything again. So, right.
There you go.
Okay. All right. So financial update. So I just wanted to obviously go through what the finance department has been doing for the last, 7-8 months. Work on the 2024 budget, go through, Proposition 2.5, where we get the numbers from, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, if you have questions, let me know. So that's slide number 1. That's There we are. Yes. That didn't work at all. Hopefully. All right. All right. Moving on. So that's essentially what I was going to discuss today. First from, see, Mr. Knight is not here. Warrants. Warrants, there was a big issue last meeting. You've brought up the,
Madam President?
Councilor Carviallo.
So you mentioned the warrants. We appreciate, you've giving us, we've gotten like January, February, March of 2020. It's kind of, that ship has kind of sailed. You can get it, but I'd appreciate if you can give us all the 22s. I mean, at least the 22s will reflect what we did last, where we are from last year.
right, you should have December of 2020.
I know, but that's 1 month.
Right, I know. So, yeah, I will talk.
If you're gonna do all of 20 to 21,
Right.
by the time you get to 22, it's gonna be the end of the year. I mean, no disrespect to you, Bob, because, I know you got a lot on your plate, but I'd rather see the 2022 stuff.
I will tell the mayor's office to.
And my other question is,
Stuff and
in the 4 months you sent us, there's no legal expenses there. I haven't seen any legal
That's-
expenses, and maybe you're looking at a different thing than I am.
It would be in the legal department.
I don't know, unless my other counsel have seen legal figure there. I haven't seen anything for legal for KP Law. I've seen a couple of other odd law firms that do, employment law and stuff like that, but I haven't seen a mention of KP Law in any of the 4 that you sent us.
Well, I can look into that
I mean,
and get you that. I mean, if that's specifically what you want.
Well,
then,
we'd like to know where we are with them.
Right.
But I say, in the 4 that you sent us, it's not a mention of KP Law in any one of them.
Okay.
Unless I'm looking at it wrong, if you could tell me that I'm looking at the wrong spot.
I just, when I gave you, for instance, December 2022.
Right.
That's literally every vendor that we sent checks to for December of
Well, I mean,
2022.
unless KP Law is working for free, which is, then we got one hell of a deal.
Because the lawyers do that out of the bottom of their
Right.
heart. Because
And like I say, unless they're doing work here pro bono, but like I say, and
Well-
I've gone through every page of every one, and I did see odd law firms, but and they were representing the city on some other things, but
All right, I will look into that. I will
appreciate it.
have I will have talk to the mayor's office and we'll prioritize fiscal 2022. All right, fiscal 2023, pardon me. The next one is just, this is the issue here is that when you pull these reports, you really do have to go through them with a fine tooth comb to make sure that nobody's names are in it that could be protected, we could be, legally vulnerable if we put them out there. So that's what the mayor's office is doing. I give them the reports, they go through it, they make sure that everything's, and it should just be people's names. In this case, it's, parents of students, it's transportation. But that's one of the things that takes the most time with actually doing this. But like I said, I will talk to them and I will make sure they prioritize fiscal 2023. And I'll look into what legal bills we're paying. That's, that's easy enough.
Vice President Bears.
Thanks, Director Dickinson, for being here. Just on the warrant, something that I emailed the mayor about, and just wanted to see if you had a thought on it. Would it be possible to, if there's a few sections within each warrant or, with each month's set of warrants where there's a lot of redactions, would it be possible to simplify the work by giving us a summary of veterans benefits or a summary, not include the individual lines, and then you wouldn't have to do so much work redacting them, or is it more complicated than that?
It's a matter of how the system processes things. If you want to see the individual vendors, which I assume you do, we got to check to XYZ.
Yeah.
Then you'd have to do several reports, and then you'd still have to go through it and make sure there isn't a random thing, because a lot of this stuff could be charged. It's done by department, funded department.
Yeah.
There are a lot of special revenue funds that deal with students. We wouldn't want those names to get out, depending on what they were, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, I could generate a report that just summarized veterans for that one department, but still have to look through it, make sure. It really is that type of thing that we need to do.
Given that the main concern between us seeing the information and the ability of the administration to produce it is the time-consuming nature of the redactions. Would it be possible for us to come in and see the reports here while the redactions are being made for them to eventually be submitted to us? Like, for example, a printed version that we could come to the building and look at, or look at it on a computer screen, or look at it in an executive session of some kind, so that we would be able to look at it, but not necessarily take a copy out publicly, and then there wouldn't be a concern about the public viewing a redacted item?
I'd have to ask the mayor's office if that's, if they think that that's possible and appropriate.
Okay. Because I do feel that we are, I can understand the public concern, and once a PDF gets out in an email, then it's a public document, et
Yes, then
cetera.
it's there forever. So
But we are city employees,
Yes.
we could come into the building and have a look at the information, even if it's taking time to create a version that could then be shared with us on our, digitally. So if you could
Right.
bring that back, that would
Yes.
be, thank you.
I will ask them.
Thank you.
So anyway,
Was Nina's hearing it on right now?
She is.
Why don't we ask her?
All right. Madam Chief of Staff, are you able to respond to that question as far as options to? Sorry, I can't tell she's.
Good evening, President Morrell, members of the council, Councilor Scarpelli. Happy to do my best. I mean, I'm just in thinking about the question that was asked. My greatest concern is that I'd have to think through the component of the public body, the city council being a public body. Anything that's shared with the city council would ultimately constitute to something that becomes a public record. And once a confidential matter becomes a public record, it can't be undone. And that's the reason for the redactions. So I need to think through it a bit, and I also need to speak with council, but there is a possibility. I just don't know. I don't want to speak too soon on the matter and say, yes, that's possible, or no, because there's a fine detail that needs to be thought through that I need to consult with council on.
Thank you, Madam Chief of Staff. Vice President Bears.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Madam Chief of Staff. I think specifically, the idea that may get around all of that would be if us as individual counselors and employees of the city could view a copy that we could not take out of the building. If that's the easiest option versus some of the options requiring more time to think through, that would be something that could get the information to us much more quickly than it's currently happening. And I think that would go a long way towards answering questions we have and making sure that we, I think the longer it takes for us to get information, the more there's going to be a mistrust of why we don't have that information. So I think finding a solution that allows us access to the information as quickly as possible, respecting the capacity of the administration, would be advisable. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to
All right.
continue, Director Dickinson?
Finance Department updates. As we know, we did an awful lot of work very quickly back last spring, getting the audit done, getting free cash for 2021 dealt with, and getting the budget into place. This summer, of course, there's lights on, which is budget transfer requests, cash receipts, cleaning up accounts, doing reconciliations. That's underway, and I feel confident that we are making good headway with all of that stuff. 2022, we're almost closed on 2022. I have one reconciliation that I still have to do. After that is done and the journal entry are in, then that gets submitted to the state. I'm hoping, knock on wood, to get that done tomorrow and submitted. Then we'll have to close the system out, generate reports for them, and see what they come up with a free cash number. 2022 audit was started in early February, so slightly ahead of where we were last year, which is good. The auditors are here this week. They were here all day today. They're getting their reports. I think we've got, I think we have everything they need. done most of the actual invoice testing and the, back end stuff that they need to do to be confident that our systems are in order.
Specific question from Counselor Carviallo.
Through the chair, this council has requested an independent audit in the past. Who's doing the audit? You or
Roselli and Clark.
Sorry?
Roselli and Clark,
Okay,
just like every year, they are an independent audit firm.
okay.
They are responsible to make sure that, that just like every municipality,
This group did ask for an independent audit last year. We've asked, and again, I know Rosalie, but
well, I'm not sure.
and we've never seen the report of the audit from other years either. Where in the past we have brought,
Okay. Municipalities in Massachusetts are required to have an independent audit every year. That's Roselli and Clark. They've been
Right.
doing it for the last few years. I don't know who did that before. They did Nantucket. Before Roselli and Clark, it was Powers and Sullivan. All of that, the ACFR's annual comprehensive financial reports are all on the website. You
in
can go
the
through them.
past, we've gotten a copy of those independent audits, and I haven't seen one in the last couple of years here.
Okay.
Not your fault. Not your
I'll go on the
fault.
website
You
and
weren't
print them out.
here.
No, I'll go on the website and
Yeah.
print them out, or I'll email the PDF to you. They're on, literally, they are on the website. There's links on the finance page to go look at all of the stuff they do. The annual comprehensive financial report and the single audit of federal funds.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
if there's more auditing that this council needs, we can talk about how to do it. It would be silly to, well, not silly, but it would be a conversation about duplicating work.
No, like I say, in the past, we had gotten them and, we don't see anything anymore. So,
All right, well, then, yeah, no, they're on the website. I'll be happy to send them to you. So.
If I can.
Counselor Scarpelli.
Bob, thank you. I just want to make sure, reiterate, before we keep moving on, that why this is important and why we need to see actuals. I think it's important that we've been getting money papers and we've been asking to approve this and approve that, but we haven't seen anything that shows the day-to-day budget that we're working on. So I know you're presenting something, but we still don't, I know we're asking for 2022, and, I brought this because this is what we see as department heads in my community. And it's shared online, where we actually see the actual minute. Yeah, so, but Munis works. But it's where we see where every penny's going in a month-to-month basis. We get reports month-to-month now. So where I'm having a problem with is I'm trying to do the business for the people that put me in the seat. And, all we keep hearing is that next year is going to be it's a scary budget. I mean, I know you mentioned something last year that we were starting from behind and we're trying to catch up. And we're talking about, we don't know what the free cash is. We don't know what we're going to have for spending. So it's a little scary as we're trying to do our work. So and I think that this is why having this meeting, and I think that I wish Council Knight was here because he really, was one of the, people that really push for this, but understanding that where we are financially, so we can make the decisions that's needed day to day. And I know it's been very difficult for you, and I'm not saying it's you, but I still don't see, there's nothing that I can revert back to and look at. In the past, we've been able to look back at our finances and say, this is where we are financially. This is where we need to be. So it gave me the sense of security when it came to voting on $100,000 paper or looking at someone's, that we're holding off on some CAFs because we don't see the budget. We don't know where the money is. We don't know what's happening. So with people that should be, getting upgrades, I can't approve anything until we know where we stand financially. So I only say this not You don't have the answers right now, I know that, but
Yeah, I
I
don't
just- this is
have
the
one of
reason.
these for you.
no, I know, I'm just saying, well, the reason why I'm just saying it, I'm just letting you know that for one council, this has been very frustrating. Again, this isn't one person's fault or, this is something that here we are in almost beginning of March. We have March, April, May, we're gonna start the process. In June, we're gonna have to vote on a budget that we have no clue about. And I think this is what's frightening for residents is when they ask me, or teachers ask me, or police or fire ask me, or custodials ask me, George, what's the budget look like? We don't know. Do we have any feeling from the administration? We don't know. So here we are, when we finally get everything that we need, and I know you're doing your best to get that. I feel like it's going to be in the, 11th hour, and we're going to be sitting here again at 1 a.m, and it's going to be even dire than it was last year. At least that's the rumors going around. And I hate to do the business of the city with rumors and innuendos, but we have no communication. And I know that what's frustrating for me is that as we're asking you things, you're saying that, well, I have to ask the mayor's office, but we don't have, there should be somebody here, don't you agree, that should be here with the city, that we can get to the bottom of these issues so we can understand the city's budget, so we can help or, at least stop the rumors, stop the discussions that are going on in this community, because people are in fear right now. I got parents that are calling me saying, George, are there going to be cuts in the public schools? I don't know. That's what has been said back and forth by some parties. If that's the case, I'm not sending my child here. These are big decisions people want to know. So it's just, and again, I just needed to say what I needed to say, because I think this is where I am as one counselor, where we are with the financial outlook of this community. It's still very foggy. I appreciate what you gave us. Understanding Proposition 2.5, I think we know that. The finance department, I think we understand, but it's just frustrating, and I hope you understand. I'm sure you're frustrated as well, but this is, I've never done business this way, where I work or where we were my first 14 years on this council and school committee. It's just very disheartening. Thank you, Madam President.
Right. Just,
Director Dickinson.
these reports are available. Talk to the mayor's, I will talk to the mayor's office. We'll figure out what reports you need to get in terms of year-to-date. I mean, this is a simple year-to-date budget report. We look at these all the time, obviously. And just to reassure you, we have no intention of springing any budget stuff on you on June 28th this year. It's
Right. We didn't get a budget last year, so I wish you do. At least we get something. But this is where my frustration comes in, when people saying, George, what do you see in the budget so far? And the answer is, we don't know yet. Because we still didn't vote or anything. All we did is got by last year at 1 o'clock in the morning.
yes.
So that's what's frustrating. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So it's not, there is nothing here to prepare this council to be prepared for a budget. There's nothing here. This doesn't
There's
prepare me
nothing
for the
here.
budget, my friend.
There will be long before we're actually voting on this stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Because I didn't like being up till 2 a.m. on June
Yeah.
28th either. That wasn't fun. So in any event,
I think we have a question from Vice President Barris. Sorry.
sure.
I think you got through most of the slide. Just in general, I just want to jump back on two things really quickly to Councilor Scarpelli's point. And then I have a question about, I think, the last bullet point on this slide. Number one, I think in the issue here, or at least an issue here, is an issue of communication. And, hearing that there's, year-to-date budget to actuals that we could look at, that you're looking at on a regular basis, having a high-level version of that sent to the council every month would go a long way. And then we can see, I'm a sucker for data. I'd love to see it compared to the last 5 years of budgets versus actuals. That's probably a lot more work, right? But, having something, I'm just saying it'd be nice to be able to look at the trends over time. But even just having, here's what the budgeted amount was for fiscal 23, here's where we are year to date, and having that come to us every month for each, department or top level account, but not the sub accounts. Yeah.
That would be, this is a problem with all software and how it's cut up, but to my mind, what you would need to see is the budget to actuals as voted. So for instance, the finance department, you voted last June for X amount of money for salaries. Then as of December 31st, this is
Right.
what we'd run through.
Right.
So you can see all that stuff. I mean,
Right.
that's getting that together with tying that back to the actual votes because of things like how the DPW is entered in the system takes a little bit of effort.
Yeah.
So trying to do that back 5 years or so,
A lot.
because I'd have to trace it back to the actual votes that the council voted.
Yeah.
So that would take some time. But
Yeah.
Again,
Even just a document like that to start with every month, knowing that something more detailed would take more time, just saying this is the year-to-date spend across the city and having that every month. And I'm just speaking of as an example. I think, what we're looking for, and we've kind of gone after it a bunch of different ways. We've sent a resolution asking for a presentation. We've talked about the warrants. We've talked about this and that. We're just looking for kind of a consistent package of information where when we receive it, we feel comfortable knowing the fiscal state of the community. I think, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I think that's basically what we're asking for. And to me, that's it's really a question of communication. It sounds like, at least in some form, the data is clearly available and could be brought to us, but it's just about here's specifically what we want, and here's the schedule to send it on that needs to happen. And I think that would smooth things over a lot. The other thing I just wanted to throw out there along those lines is, I agree that I want to see the warrants for everything. I think for this council, at least for many members, that the biggest thing is legal expenses. And again, this is just a suggestion. I don't know if it's to you or to the administration, that maybe if we're talking about a significant amount of work on getting all the warrants over to us since January 2020, Councilor Carviallo was saying, let's prioritize the current fiscal year. I think that makes sense. I think another thing that could make sense would be to give us all the legal stuff for the past 3 years, and then just redact that and send that over to us. And then, if it takes more time to get us the entire package and redact that, those could be delayed. So I just want to put out, there's kind of a communication and a prioritization thing here, where if we make a few little tweaks to what people are prioritizing first in getting us information, and having a clear schedule and kind of calendar of what we'll be getting when it comes to budget information or financial information, year-to-date actuals, et cetera, that could probably smooth this out more quickly than if we're sitting here waiting. We're waiting on April 2020. Well, nobody really wants April 2020 now. We want the legal bills from January 2020 to now. That seems to be the biggest priority. So if there's some way that we could either communicate with your office or with the mayor's office, or a combination of those two, to just clearly list out, here's what we would like every month, here's what we want prioritized on the warrants, then everyone's using their time most effectively. And then we're not coming back here again and, having, I hear you on when you say there will be, and this is better than what we've had so far, so I really, really appreciate this presentation. I'm hoping we can go through it because I have some really specific questions later on. But I just think getting that line of communication really ironed out and clear will help us all, not be feeling like Councilor Scarpelli's feeling, or quite frankly, how I've been feeling when people say, what's going to happen next year? And I can say, well, what I'm hearing is one thing, but when I look at free cash, I see another thing. And, I don't get a monthly or a quarterly set of data that I can, that's enough information for me to make confident statements to members of the community. And this is now a long-winded monologue, but I think you get what I'm saying.
no, I hear you. And
Okay.
We'll
And-
talk to
and-
the mayors, I'll talk to the administration and try to get you what you need.
Great.
What was your one question in that? Or?
Just if what I sounded like, just like getting clearly ironing out the line of communication, the information that should be coming and when it should be coming. If there's just some way we can sit down and do that, so that the capacity that the city is being used to its best, and the answers that we want prioritized fastest are being answered.
Madam Chief of Staff, are you able to respond to that question?
Thank you, President Morrell, and through you to Vice President Bears. I guess if I understood the question correctly, it's just figuring out an opportunity to essentially determine what exactly the city council is looking for so that they can be prioritized accordingly. Did I understand that correct, President Morrell?
I think both that and what the administration can provide. I think it's both sides of the coin.
Through you, President Morrell, sure, I don't see a reason why we couldn't do that. I mean, if I may, I'd just like to kind of point back. We do obviously have a budget book. There's a comprehensive budget book that was created the past 2 fiscal years, or maybe, I believe the past 2 fiscal years is a new version. It contains a lot more information than has historically been provided, even for last year's difficult budget that did, no one's going to deny it happened in the 11th hour. But there is a comprehensive budget book there, and hopefully, I'm certain that the council's looked at it, but hopefully the community's looking at that. Hopefully the council's referring back to that when members of the community are asking questions, because I think that's a good starting place. But certainly, we can make modifications and try to figure out a better path forward.
No, thank you for that, Madam Chief of Staff. I think there's some intent there, but and I understand how you feel about the issue, but specifically as regards to the budget book, the what's in ClearGov did not come to us until very late in the process last time, if at all, and I don't think it was ever presented to us physically. Maybe that last week, but I don't even think it was. And it's not to nitpick here, but I go on ClearGov all the time, and there's stuff in there that's not accurate, stuff that hasn't been updated based on votes of the council, actual figures that aren't accurate. And I'm not trying to demean or nitpick at the specific work, but I hear what you're saying, that you feel that you've put together something that explains to the community what the budget does. And I think that there's been versions of that over the past 3 fiscal years that are pretty strong, but last year's version came very late. And even as I look on the online version today, there's actual figures in there and some of the charts that are generated by ClearGov that just aren't accurate. And again, how we can work through that so that process doesn't happen again, so that it's not being generated so late and we're not playing catch up, that's what I'm talking about on the go forward communication front. So I really appreciate your comments on being able to arrange that and set that up.
I do have Councilor Sang. I'll go back to your Councilor.
Thanks. Back to Councilor Bears' point about, and Councilor Scarpelli's point about the year-to-date budget. I think that's something that I, as a councilor, would like to see, and I think it's something that I was actually at a municipal event earlier today, and something I learned from that event was that it's considered best practices in terms of resident engagement to put that year-to-date budget on their city website, and that different municipalities have actually found that it builds more trust with the city government, and it engages communities that haven't really been involved in city government before. And that's all to say that I actually do think speaking for myself, and I would think my fellow councilors might agree, I think putting that year-to-date budget, not only giving it to the council every month, but putting it on the city website would be helpful.
Thank you. Councilor Scarpelli.
To Madam Chair, through you to the Chief of Staff, I know that what Council Bears also mentioned, what we're hearing over and over again, different people that come to this podium, different members of the community, they're asking, the question about our legal budget. And that's probably one of the biggest things that this council is looking for. And we've said over and over again, where we stand the last few years of what we've paid out to KP Law. And then you hear different people come to the podium and announce all of these outrageous settlements. And that's what is alarming when you're talking about a budget and people are coming up talking about $250,000 settlements. It leaves people uneasy. And when we don't have the papers in front of us, when we don't understand what they're talking about, there is no way that we can either support our body or this community or agree with them. So I think that's the biggest piece right now, because right now what we're seeing is everything is going toward KP Law. And unless they're giving us a big discount, and if we are, that'd be great, because I know this council voted on a $5,000 a month fee. Wasn't that?
I don't remember voting.
That was, I believe that was the first year that they would be on as a retainer for $5,000 a month. And I know for sure we're doing way more than $60,000. So, that's the biggest answer. Can you Can you give us any insight on that, Madam Chief of Staff?
Madam Chief of Staff, I see your hand up. You want to go ahead?
Thank you, President Morrell. I had my hand up for another matter, but I'm happy to answer Councilor Scarpelli's question. As far as the legal budget that was approved for fiscal 23, and I believe the prior fiscal year as well, but I'd have to double check on that. The retainer is $6,800 per month, and it's a retainer. And so that retainer covers general legal services. As far as specifics, at the broad, there's 4 broad categories of what that covers. It covers general matters, like things that are general legal services, such as ordinances would be one, review of ordinances, proposed ordinances. Another category is procurement, so contracts in particular that need review by council are part of that retainer. Other general legal matters, just broad ones, would probably fall under general. And I'm trying to think. Labor is under the umbrella of that retainer, so long as it's not in any part of litigation. And the same goes for any of these categories. So long as it's not part of litigation, it's billed under the retainer. So the city doesn't pay $1 extra. And I will tell you, having gone through the legal bills, we more than get our fair share of services through that retainer. So it's $6,800 per month. If there are any expenses, mileage, predominantly a lot of things are being done by Zoom these days, so that's certainly helpful. If there's any cost for reproduction or otherwise, those are added, as with any business or any consultant. And then there's one other category I'm not bringing to mind right now, but I can certainly find it and advise if that's of interest this evening. As far as costs, we do have some litigation. Those matters, obviously, the city wouldn't discuss matters of litigation, and I know you all know this. I'm just stating this for anyone else who's listening in. But the city wouldn't discuss matters of litigation, obviously, in any public session. But certainly, as was discussed earlier, we can discuss what level of information is needed, how to prioritize it, and provide it in as timely a fashion as we can. But the reason I had my hand up earlier was I was just kind of reflecting on some of the comments, and I was. Part of why we're here tonight is at the City Council's request to present a financial update. And there's some information that I hope and believe that the City Council will find helpful through this presentation, but we actually have to get to that point in the presentation. In particular, maybe the City Council is looking for year-to-date expenses and on a regular basis, for instance. But, I do believe Finance Director Dickinson has prepared, as part of the slide work and slide deck, information on year-to-date expenses for this fiscal year. And perhaps it's not at the level of depth that's the council may be seeking, but to my knowledge, I don't know that we've received year-to-date expense requests. And the last comment I'll say at a very high level is, communities who are able to produce year-to-date information and post it online, most of those communities have an automated system. Our systems are pretty antiquated. They've been antiquated for decades of years, as far as I can tell. I believe that the city has been on, and Director Dickinson can certainly correct me if I'm incorrect, but the city's been on its current financial software since the late 90s, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was later than that, but we're talking about a substantial period of time, and the city has quite a bit of work to do to get to the point where we can present information at the same level of depth and sophistication, quite honestly, that other communities can, because their tools allow it.
Thank you.
So
Councilor Scarpelli.
So thank you for not answering anything I just asked. So I find it, Madam Chief of Staff, lately, when we're asking a question, you are very defensive, and all we're trying to do is get questions that are asked by our constituents to answer their needs. And for me to ask a question when I feel like I need to ask a question, whether our financial director hasn't gone to it yet, that's too bad for you. And I can only say that in the nicest way. But I will tell you, you still didn't answer the question about KP Law. So if we request payment or all billing and invoices from KP Law, with everything you're saying, you're telling me publicly that it falls in a $6,800 retainer, not including traffic or gas or mileage. I just want to make sure that's what you're saying.
President Morrell, through you. No, that's not at all what I said. I said that as long as it doesn't include matters of litigation, then it would be inside that $6,800 retainer.
Well, all due respect, Madam Chief of Staff, this is the question we have. We have questions because even ordinances that we're asking for, there's still question and doubt stating that if those aren't reviewed by representation for this council, then it's not legal. Because KP Law has already stated they don't work for this council, they work for the mayor. So there's so many different issues. So litigation, that's exactly what we're talking about. This is, we need to know as a community how much this city has spent for legal fees from soup to nuts. I think that's a public record. If that has to be done a different way, it will be. But that was all I'm saying. So thank you.
President Bears.
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I mean, we can talk on the details all we want. The issue here is an issue of trust and an issue of communication. Communication hasn't happened, therefore trust hasn't happened. I said this in June. We're still where we are. We can put blame to whomever we want to put blame to, or we can throw pointed statements around in either direction. It's not going to get us anywhere. I agree with Councilor Scarpelli that we need more information. I understand, Madam Chief of Staff, where you're coming from on the capacity. That gets to my next question, which is the bullet point on Director Dickinson's presentation around upgrades to existing software usage and new software package. Last June, when you were here, we were talking about, you were talking about how you just come in and you came into a financial system that doesn't talk to each other across different areas of the city, school side, city side, treasurer, finance, that the systems that we have in place don't really communicate well with each other. And that creates, for example, the issue that we had around the ARPA reconciliation where things were double counted, and that then created 3 more weeks of everything else that had to happen, and lots of kind of revisions and adjustments that needed to be made. And I just saw the reaction you had. I think it's this reaction that I have, the reaction all of us have to what happened there. You mentioned that you thought, and again, if I'm misquoting you or paraphrasing you incorrectly, please feel free to correct me, probably a high 6 figures, low 7 figures capital expenditure needed to bring our finance systems up to snuff. Is that still where you're at, and how close are we to that? Because that seems to me to be like priority number 1 to helping you have increased capacity in your office, as well as the ability to communicate information to us and to other parts of the city better.
Okay, just leading up to that, this is leading up to that, a whole one point to be made about things like posting year-to-date budget reports to city websites. Sometimes it's a matter of resources. If you are fighting with your computer systems, if you don't want to put something out that's incorrect, but reconciliations have to be done between the treasurer's cash book and admins, SoftWrite admins. Now, what the chief of staff was saying was what I heard was back in the late 1990s, the finance director got irritated with SoftWrite and decided to get admins for the general ledger, but the treasurer stayed on SoftWrite. That's a bad decision.
Yeah.
It's just silly. And then you have something that all communities throughout the Commonwealth have, where your chart of accounts was put together by different people over many, many years.
Yeah.
So obviously, the situation we're in right now is ripe for upgrading the software we are using. I've reached out to one software company. There's 2 others that we would definitely talk to without going into details. And yes, the software package, what you'd have to understand about that is that the software package alone is going to be pushing 7 figures.
Yeah.
Then you have yearly costs that we have to investigate. How much are we already paying for SoftWrite and admins and Harper's to do payroll and Vision to do the assessor's stuff? Yeah. How much are we already paying for those versus how much it would cost? But still, upgrading the system, just so you know, you're talking 3 years.
Yep.
Easily 3 years it would take to do that. And so my plan going forward was to talk to these software providers this year with the idea that we make a choice, bring it before the council, figure out the funding sources for it. And then starting in the winter of 2024, that's
Okay.
when we would start looking to build a new chart of accounts. We would, make a choice, build a new chart of accounts, start getting everybody to train on how to use the new system. We
Yeah.
probably need to hire an outside consultant to help with putting together the chart of accounts.
Yeah.
And then down the road, we'd start adding the modules, payroll and, payroll collector, all that sort of stuff. So that's basically the quick version of that last bullet point. That's what we're looking at. These systems cost, I think admins alone is $100,000 a year that we pay them for software and support. So we're talking a significant amount of money.
Right.
Of course, we are keeping track of, or attempting to keep track of, several $100 million a year.
Right.
And then in terms of getting reports, like I say, it's where we need, the first things on my mind every week is we need to pay everybody.
Yeah.
Payroll has to go out. We have to make sure we have enough cash. We have to keep the lights on. And then we have to allocate resources after that. I have to get the 2022 audit done. I have to get 2022 free cash in.
Yep.
So it's resource allocation. I think we can really, with some talking, we can work out what we can get you, and that shouldn't be a problem down the road. So that's
Great.
basically what I would say about that.
Yeah, and just if I can on that, I'm glad to hear that there's kind of a timeline in place. I myself am doing albeit much, much smaller version of this at a nonprofit organization, renewing our chart of accounts, et cetera. And it's one system, it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
But even we're talking about, we're implementing it next fiscal year. There's a 9-month timeline. So I understand it takes time.
Right.
I think for us, and I understand you have to cost it out. I really appreciate that outline. I think, and then this goes back on the communication side of things. And I'm not saying it needed to be for today or it needs to be for next week or, at some point having that process written down somewhere and shared with us so we can discuss what our role needs to be in it. Or if anyone asks questions about it, we can get to them, answer those. That would be helpful. Cause I think, for me, and then I'm guessing for you, that making this a priority for our capital spending is important because having this system work better means everything else starts to work better.
Yes. I'm at the chief of staff's behest. I've started to put together notes on the various things that our computer systems don't do that would be better if they did. I ran a report recently for somebody who's doing some forecasting in admins, and it's just literally snow and ice for the last 4 years. What are all the transactions? It took 6 minutes to run that report. And the way admins works, once you turn it on and tell it to do that report, you can't do anything else in admins until it's done.
Yeah.
Unis, it would have taken 15 seconds. And even if it took longer than that, you can be doing 8 other different things. You can be looking up POs. You can get into it. That's the environment I'm used to.
Yeah.
So, I had something else that just totally escaped my mind on this whole point. But, it's left my mind. So
We'll find it again.
if it comes in, I will let you know. So anyway, next one, we're talking about budgets. Just to alleviate some of your fears, we have been actively working on the 2024 budget already. Chief of Staff and Courtney Cardello, my Assistant Finance Director, who has been a godsend, have met with all the department heads. They've gone through prior year's budgets to see where any savings might, be had. We're looking forward, getting data on employees' step increases for, several years out. So yes, the goal is to start really submitting 2024 budget stuff by the end of April, so you will be able to see it and actually process it for a while.
Question related to that. Do we know when the school side, they're going to be working with that number? Because I know they usually start much earlier than us.
I know we're working on getting a good number to them for what the city will be able to do. All of this is we want to be fair to the schools. We want to be fair to the employees. At the same time, we have to be careful that we have the money to do it. So we're trying to be fair to the city itself and the citizens of the city. I mean, part of the actually the next bullet point speaks to that. Last year, there was a big variance between what we had for state. We don't have cherry sheet money for next year. We don't have estimates of that yet. That's an important part of our revenue stream. So, when I'm doing the budget, I'm literally taking the budget requests and then I'm making the 2024 tax recap off of that. So I have all the revenue. This is what we need to spend. This is where we're going to get the money. I don't have the cherry sheets yet.
That's because the new governor, it's delayed till March 1st versus usually end of January for Gov's budget cherry sheets.
For whatever reason, I click on it and it's still got 2023.
Well, the reason for that is the governor's budget hasn't been submitted yet because it's a new governor.
In any event, we don't have that.
Do you have a question, Vice President Bears?
I can let Bob finish, then I'll ask.
Okay.
So that's one of the reasons that we have to be, we can't get you a fully fleshed out budget that quickly.
Yeah.
But it will be well before June.
So on that point, you met with all department heads. Have you met with I know that Mr. Murphy's left, but have you met with admin and finance at the school system as well? Or is he temporarily still?
He's temporarily still working there, and of course, Michelle is there. Honestly, Chief of Staff and the Assistant Finance Director really have taken this mostly off my plate. I've been reviewing what they have. So it's for us right now, it's general fund city. I don't believe they've made preliminary talks with the school yet.
Okay. So that's Chief of Staff and the Assistant Director. Do you know if they've met with, and if the Chief of Staff can talk about it, have they met with boards and commissions, chairs of boards and commissions? Because I know I've been receiving some real concerns from boards and commissions around this.
I think those budgets are probably come from last year.
Okay.
But, I can certainly look into that and ask them.
Last one's a little self-serving, but President Morrell and I, if you were to gracefully include me in such a meeting, have not been met with about the legislative budget yet. So that's another one for the list.
All right. Well, noted. And we will get those. I'll work with Courtney to make sure these are addressed.
Great. Yeah. And I know, again, I know it's the Chief of Staff and the Assistant Finance Director, but I know the school system, especially the school committee, would like to know sooner than later, at least some idea of where they're going for the next year.
Councilor Scarpelli?
Real quick, Bob. So as we're going through this budget, are our department heads able to see what they have actuals, so they're being able to manage their budgets?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's another thing. I just, so talking about software systems, which brings up the point that I wanted to make beforehand that I forgot about, is that while we're looking at these new software systems, we're not using the software systems that we have effectively. There have been times when people have come to me and said, I won't name the department, and said, hey, I can't see my budget. And that's a permissions thing in admins. Yes, you can see, people should be able to look, department heads need to be able to look at their budgets. They need to get slightly more complicated than that due to the way things are voted, but people need to do that. I recently ran across a huge, well, for me, a somewhat irritating issue where tax bills get loaded onto SoftWrite and abatements get loaded on the SoftWrite, but all of that is put into admins by hand. It's like, let's make the computers do the work that they can do.
Yeah.
This is phenomenal.
You know,
Someone take
I
it-
come
take it
from a
from tonight.
Munis environment, which is why I'm trying to be very careful about just saying, hey, we should have Munis.
Hey, we should have Munis. I could say it.
Right, okay. Yeah, no, there's a lot that Munis does that's very good. I haven't played with other software systems, so I played somewhat with SoftWrite. One of my issues right now is that there's stuff in SoftWrite that I can't see. I'm the finance director. I should be able to see everything in SoftWrite. And it's just a question of, the same thing as uploading tax bills. It's just a question of, okay, we have to talk to the SoftWrite. I have to get permissions to do this. We have to get them a file that can be uploaded. We have to allocate resources so those files do get uploaded into admin. So I'm not doing journal entries by hand to put stuff in there that should just go in there. It's as simple as that. So anyway, the other thing that we've been working very hard on, and again, Courtney has been just absolutely great on, is we're working on spreadsheets that actually can calculate not only percentage increases in pay, but also take into account what employees' step level is, which means having all of the employee CAF tables in the spreadsheet so that we can say, okay, if, say we decide we were working on non-union employees, but this would actually tell us more about how to do union negotiations. So say we say, okay, we want to give a 2% COLA because non-union employees haven't had cost of living increases for several years now. Say we do one back to January 1st of 2022. Well, you have one employee, they're at a certain step level. Their step date is in the middle of August. So if we do that, then they get the step increase in the middle of August. How much does it actually work out to? It's actually a very complicated spreadsheet. But once we have all the information in there, we can make much better decisions. We can look going forward to say, okay, how does this affect the budget in 2024? How does it affect it in 2025? For non-union employees, I think there's 38 of them. If we do a COLA based on January 1st, 2022, that affects the 2023 budget because the CAF table goes up by whatever percentage we're saying. We need to know that because then we have to say, okay, we didn't budget for that for 2023. So we have to know how much more. So that's one of those things that I've been hoping to get done, and it's thankfully very much on the way to being done.
We have a question from Councilor Carviallo.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question. So how have the other budget directors done this in the past? And why are we having such a problem now? I mean, when we did our budgets, we've always saw year-to-date spending and facts and actuals. Did the software deteriorate that much in the last 3 years that we're at this point where the software just doesn't work anymore?
It's not that. It's more complicated than that. The thing is that if we do a 2% COLA now, we have to take into account for the 2024 budget who actually gets step increases at that point in time.
No, but
That's not in the system. That's actually taking the CAF tables of each individual employee, figuring out when their hire date is. It makes a difference because you get your step increase on your hire date. So if your hire date is June 1st versus
Bob, a point
August
of-
1st,
point of
it's a big
information.
difference.
I don't think that's what he's asking.
Yeah,
I think he's speaking more in general.
Yeah, my question was, we've always gotten budgets in a timely fashion before with year-to-dates and actuals. Why is it that we're struggling now to get that information now? It's coming in so late and so, I mean, is your department overwhelmed or what's the reason for the backup for everything? And I know the department's been empty for a bit too. I mean,
Yes,
is that part of the problem too?
I would say, quite frankly, that's a lot of the problem. every time I try to do something, I see something else that needs to be reconciled. That takes time. And then, yes, we did not have a lot of resources. Obviously, wasn't anybody. There was just Tyler in 2022. Then Tyler moved to greener pastures. Courtney's been great, but we had a lag for, several
So
months. where
the
he
city
didn't have-
has no problem spending money for consultants to do all kinds of things. The ARPA department is probably one of the most important departments in the city, and we can't seem to get you any help to get you up to date. Is that a factual statement? I mean, you don't have to answer.
Everybody,
I mean, like I said, we spend money on consultants to do everything in the city and all kinds of things. Let's say your department is probably a key department here. You should have, even if they had to bring in temporary help to get you up to date, that should be done. You shouldn't be struggling doing 2 years ago stuff now. I mean, I don't know why that's not done. I mean, like I said, we have no problem spending money for other things, and this is a very important thing. That our budget that's our Bible. It's what we live by.
The Chief of Staff has her hand raised, which is,
I'm sorry?
the Chief of Staff has her hand raised.
Okay.
Madam Chief of Staff, did you want to speak to that question from Councilor Carviallo?
Sure. Thank you, President Morrell. Councilor Caraviallo, I just want to kind of take back. I know everything happened so late last year that, frankly, if we did mention this, I don't remember when it was mentioned or what time, but just in the buildup to the FY23 budget, the city did hire a firm to act as finance support and essentially fill the vacancy where there was the finance director vacancy. That consultant determined that there was more pressing needs that hadn't occurred back in 2021. So that work was rerouted. Their assignment was rerouted to the more pressing work, specifically reconciliation of the FY21 budget. We also did hire an interim finance director at the time, who helped us close our books. This council met, I believe, with that finance director, or at least had some capacity. Maybe, I'm not even sure if that, to be honest, finance director came to a meeting, but his name was Bill Fowler. He supported the city for a short period of time for the setting of the tax rate and worked with former Chief Assessor Ellen Bordeaux, our current interim Chief Assessor. And subsequent to that, we also hired CLA to provide further support, and we've offered to the finance department, and I think Bob could probably speak to it more in depth, and it's part of this presentation that will come up later, the support we've asked from CLA, an accounting firm who also assists the city with matters relating to ARPA. So,
Madam Chief of Staff, just.
So if we hired all these people to do all this work, why are we still playing catch up? Why are we still playing catch up? You just said you hired a half a dozen people to do all this work, and our finance director saying he's still playing catch up as of today. Why is he doing that? What did all those other people do that we paid them? Did they not do their job?
President Morrell?
I don't know. You tell me. I mean,
Please, Madam Chief of Staff, if you.
Thank you. Again, I think I hear your frustration. I don't know how exactly to answer the question other than to say that there was work that predated even the vacancy in finance director. And so we are in a process of trying to determine exactly what work, like systems and existing needs in terms of resources. And we're trying to put resources in places to make sure we're getting to where we need to be. But again, our software is holding us back. And, I'm not saying that we should go to any specific software, but I am saying that we need to look at how that's affecting our resource constraints, because it's adding burden to the work that's needing to be done. Because there's catch-up work that pre-existed even the vacancy. So I don't know what more I can say at this point.
Thank you.
And if I may, you can hire consultants all you want. You still have to get them the data so that they can work on it. And we've been trying to leverage the availability of consultants to do things. For instance, ARPA calculations for revenue replacement, which are important. But
so we have an ARPA director. What's the job of the ARPA director then?
she's keeping track of all the spending and all the applications for ARPA funding. But again, there's a limit to what you can do with an outside, just from my personal experience, there's limits to what an outside consultant can actually do, because you have to say, okay, take this piece, do X with it. Then you have to get them the data so they can actually do X with it. So we're in a much better place than we were, and I'm going to keep working on getting everything done. But, as Chief of Staff pointed out, when you're going through the books and things pop up, I'm a pointy-headed accountant. I have to sit down, and I don't like it when I'm off by 5 cents. And unfortunately, that type of detail takes time.
So before you came, we had a budget director before you. So are we saying that she left here in a mess? Is that what you're saying? Or was there a mess when you, I mean,
I hesitate
she managed to balance every year. We got a budget on time. And then, when she left, whatever date she left, and then we went all that time without any kind of, buddy sitting in the office. Are you saying that we're still doing that from when the past budget director left until now?
I hesitate to comment on my predecessor or the work that was done while she was not here. I'm just saying I am still cleaning up stuff that's happened in the last 2 years. So I don't know what more I can say than that. Unfortunately, these things take time. And when something crops up that I have to look into, I have to look into it until I'm satisfied that I'm correct. So I had hoped that I would be more ahead of the game now than I am. But I'm not, and that's simply a function of what I have to reconcile. So,
You want to go on, Bob? You want to continue?
oh, that's pretty much it. To me,
Oh, with
To
the
me,
presentation though, as far as I think we still have some numbers to go, and
oh yeah, sure.
I know we're taking you up, down, and sideways, but I want to make sure we get through
Okay.
your presentation.
Yeah, I assume everybody here knows about Proposition 2.5. You've heard of this. This is in detail. Oh man, oh yeah, no, I had a wonderful conversation with a friend whose mother owned a house on Nantucket about Prop 2.5, because all of a sudden her tax bill doubled, and I had to point out to her that the neighborhood she was in doesn't have comparable sales, and then somebody else went and bought a house right next door to her mom's house for roughly twice as much as her house was assessed at. And she's like, it's Proposition 2.5. How can it go? Well, it's the total amount that you can take in plus certified new growth.
No, just
Vice President
just
Barron.
to this point, and again, it's not anything that's your fault. I have this discussion a lot with people who are saying, well, my bill went up by this, it's Proposition 2.5. And, and then I try to point them to DLS or explain how 2.5 works myself. It may be worth, between you and the assessor's office, having some sort of one pager on the city website that's like, this is what 2.5 means for a person. I know that's priority 12 right now, but it does come up a lot where people are really confused about it, especially with how valuations are growing so
Right.
quickly.
Right. Yes. No, especially in an
I
environment
believe it wasn't what the assessment was. Our taxes went down, but the assessments went so high.
Rates go down.
And we were getting phone calls that, that their taxes went up, and we're trying to explain to them, no, your home has been assessed. Maybe the last time your home was assessed was 5 years ago.
Right.
In this climate now,
certainly.
I think that's a big piece to understand. So I think Council
especially
Bears is right.
Right. Especially in an environment where property values have been going up astronomically. So it's hard to explain. It's like, well, somebody just built a beautiful park right next to your house, and then houses in your neighborhood suddenly are worth more. Well, so certified new growth is something that we will get into on the next slide, actually. But these are the big chunks of where revenue comes from. Obviously, taxes, motor vehicle excise, building permits, et cetera, which is local receipts.
Council Scarpelli.
I'm sorry about that. With that, Bob, I know that one of the things that really stuck with me was the new growth. When in last year's budget, I believe it was 1.8 million. That's what we were projected. And I believe the question was that a lot was going to come from fees and fines, projection from traffic and parking, if I can recall.
That's
Is it separate?
That's not new growth.
No.
No, that's local receipts.
Local receipts.
Yeah, local receipts are, run through them. Motor vehicle excise tax,
Right.
boat
Food
excise,
tax, right.
meals, rooms, pilot payments in lieu of taxes, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen a great deal of growth in that.
Right.
As big projects come online.
So what was
Permits,
our budget?
fees.
What was that line for new growth that we were projecting last year in the budget? Because
We were
that's, I recall that was the number, because it was so low.
Right, in 20, if I, off the top of my head,
Yeah.
they were, again, when you're doing these projections, obviously, I said this last spring.
Right.
You're doing these projections when you're coming out of a pandemic, you have squirrely data. The projections, the new growth on, not the new growth, the local receipts on the fiscal 2022 recap were very, very conservative based on what had happened the previous year. When we were presenting the budget this year, I said, okay, I think I can, based on what I've seen for the first 5 months of 2022, I think I can up that. And the number that we used was 18.5 million for local receipts. Local receipts, one of the things to remember about municipal finance is that it always lags a year. You're trying to be conservative, you're trying to make sure that you've got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and it's going to lag a year. So I projected 18.5 million in local receipts when we're putting together, as I said, I do a recap based on how much money we need to raise. It looks like 2022, we're way on top of that. But when we're looking at this, when we're actually putting together the recap, we've based the budget on the 18.5. Should mean that next year I will be able to, and when you're in my position, if you come up with some wild number for local receipts, DOR will look at you and say, okay, that's great. Show me the first 6 months of this year. Do you think you're actually going to hit that number? So you need to be conservative. You need to make sure that you've got, you've got room so that you're actually hitting those targets, or else you get a revenue deficit. And that's
I think my concern was at the time was new growth that we were seeing in neighboring communities. They were going through the roof.
On 2.5.
On
The new construction.
The
and
new
significant
construction,
renovation.
significant, right, that's where I'm trying to get at.
okay.
And
So
so what do we see? Is there a trend that we're seeing that we're gaining? Okay, good.
it's going up. So I knew there was a question about where excess levy capacity came
Yeah,
from. And
that
this,
was for
this
me.
gets into nuts and bolts.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
thank you.
I saw just, the DOR website has, I think, that this figure up there, which I was like, wow, we have excess levy capacity. That's great because we can raise the levy and bring that money in. And you're saying it's new growth?
Yeah, I have some slides on what that
Great.
is. When I look at that, I'm looking at, okay, that's great. We have levy capacity. We have headroom in the levy. That's good. Bond people love it. Auditors love it, because that means if something comes up, you actually have some headroom in your levy capacity. Where it comes from is, again, when you're putting together your recap, you're trying to be reasonable across the board. When we put together the budget for fiscal 2023, we made assumptions. Once we've made that budget, we've decided we're going to raise X amount of money. If we actually have more headroom in the levy limit, then I have to put it somewhere on the recap.
Yeah.
Because the number that this council voted for budgets, that goes in there. What the actual numbers for, what the cherry sheet charges are, those go in there, et cetera. What we're raising for snow and ice go in there. There's limits to where I can actually capture more of that. If you look at the next slide, right, this is actually what we estimated for our levy capacity when we were putting together the budget. But once we put that in, it actually was $670,000 more. And then on the next slide, you can see we got much more cherry sheet revenue than we had projected, right? And then our cherry sheet expenses were much less. We also estimated, I think, 1.5 million or something that for new growth. It came in at 2.2. That's something we couldn't have known last spring.
Right.
But then once we get the final number in, so when you look at the $1.8 million in levy capacity, that's where that number comes from.
President Bears.
Just to that point, just because just want to make sure I get everything right. So on the slide 1 here, the 131,972, is that what was budgeted for the 2.5 for the property tax levy for the fiscal 23 budget?
Yes.
And then when DLS came back and said, this is what all your actual figures are, it was really this 133,790.
Yes, that's what we could have raised.
And
we already put the budget in place. Now, when you're looking at these numbers, I mean, then I suppose I could go into local receipts and say, oh, hey, we're not going to make an extra $1 million in local receipts. But then when my 2022 finals come in, my revenues are like a lot more than 18.5.
Right.
You have to say, is that a good idea?
Right.
Also, remember, in terms of the voting public, everybody pays property taxes. That's where this comes from.
Right.
If you have headroom in that, property taxes are slightly lower.
Right.
So that's good for the residents.
Although we
So
when we're in the context of an override, and the answer is, well, we could do an override or we have headroom,
Well, to me, the idea is that you keep some headroom, right? And then when
Right.
you're looking at the override, that allows you to say, I'm going to use this override money to do X. It's
Yeah.
not just, I need more money.
Right.
You can use the override to say specific things.
purposes,
We need
yeah,
to
yeah.
fund 10 new firefighters down the road.
Yeah.
That is going to be, that's going to cost X amount. And that's going to stay on the books for years.
Right. And then you still have the headroom
Right,
if you need it.
right. You have
I
that.
just want to I appreciate the detail. I just want to make sure I have all this right. So 131,972 is which was in the fiscal 23 budget. DLS says our levy limit was actually 133,790. This 133,120 estimate, what is that on the second slide?
I believe that's what we were estimating. Oh God, I'm going to have to look at these again. I think that's what we were estimating for the levy limit. And then it actually came in that much more.
But we still were leaving about $1 million in headroom between the levy and the levy limit for 23, FY 23?
Yes.
Okay. And then on slide 3, I'm seeing we got about 700,000 more in state revenue than we expected, and we had about 700,000 less in expenses. Now, that would be like 1.4 million difference, but that would just be money that would go to free cash, right? That wouldn't affect the levy limit because it's a cherry sheet thing.
No, it does, because that means when you think about cherry sheet expenses, they were $700,000 less
Yeah.
than we estimated. So we're using the estimated number when we're making the budget,
Yeah,
but then when we're actually doing the tax recap, it's less,
right,
right? We have more cherry sheet revenue.
right,
That means that goes in the revenue section.
Right.
We had estimated 29 million for cherry sheet revenue. It came in a little over 30.
right.
So now it's 30. So that other number down here of what we actually need to raise in taxes in order to fund the 2023 budget that we voted on
Is lower.
is lower.
So because of the difference in cherry sheet, we were raising the levy by less than we had budgeted for?
We don't need to raise as much in taxes to fund the fiscal 2023 budget. The levy limit increases based on 2.5 and new
Right.
gross. So
But the levy rate increases based on the tax rate, right?
the actual, the tax rate is what comes out of the tax recap,
Right,
basically. So that's the tax levy, yes, that comes out of the recap.
right.
The levy limit increases by new growth and 2.5. The point is that we because of the way we voted fiscal 2023's budget, because of the numbers we were using to do that, we didn't actually need to fund what we had voted. We actually didn't need to use as much we didn't need to go straight up to the actual levy limit for
Right.
fiscal 2023. If you look at fiscal 2022, there was practically no headroom at all.
Right. It was like yeah,
That's because we allocated $1.9 million into the allowance for abatements.
yeah,
Our allowance for abatements numbers are healthy, so this is another 6 of this, half dozen the other. Because those abatement numbers are healthy, I talked to the assessor to make sure there's nothing out there that we're going to have to abate millions of dollars for.
right.
We only actually raised, I think it was $577,000 and change this year to put into the allowance,
Yeah,
right? Because when you do that, you're basically soaking up, we could have put in another 2.3.
Right.
Raised the 577 plus 1.8,
right.
and then we would be right up to the levy limit.
We wouldn't have spent.
But then we have a whole bunch of money in allowance for abatements that we would need to vote to release.
Into free cash or,
Yeah, it would essentially fall to free cash.
yeah. I guess my
So-
question is, and just so it's, the way I generally understand it is the revenue side of the general fund is basically the levy, local receipts, and state aid, for lack of making it more complicated than that.
Sure. Yeah.
If the complications are where this question runs off the rails, then I'm happy to make it more complicated than that. What I'm seeing is, local receipts, we estimated 18.5 million. We may have revenue above that, but we don't know. Well, let's say that's 18.5. The state aid, we received 700,000 more and spent 700,000 less. Is it fair to say that there's 1.4 million more in that bucket than we thought there would be, or 700,000? Let's just say the revenue side. We received 700.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
The 1.4. We need, because of the new numbers, we needed to raise $700,000 less.
Right.
than we thought that we had budget that we thought when we were.
Right. Okay. This is where I'm getting confused. So we said we needed to raise, and this is mostly for my edification. I apologize to everybody else, but I think it's important to know. Are you saying that basically because of that change, the levy went up? The levy element, the property tax element of the revenue on the general fund side was less than it would have been if we had not received or had.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's.
And so that's a component of the reason that there's so much headroom.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not that we just received more and therefore there's going to be a bunch more money going into free cash. It's actually that because the cherry sheet was about 1.4 million off, we just raised the levy less than we thought we were going to.
Yes.
And does that flow back to anybody, or does that reduce the rates does that affect the rates that we approved?
That affects the tax rate.
Okay.
The tax rate isn't as high because you're not totally at the levy limit.
Right, but I guess what I'm saying is we approved a tax rate in December 2021 for the year 2022, and then we approved a tax rate in December 2022 for this calendar year 2023.
We approve. This is a good old municipal finance in Massachusetts.
This
The
is
year
where I'm
starts-
getting locked up.
The year starts as of 7/1,
Okay,
right? July 1st. We do a preliminary tax issuance in July and then another quarterly one in October.
Right.
And the actual tax rates get for fiscal 2023 get set on the 2023 recap.
Okay.
And that's what we're talking about. So
And when would
you
we
would have
vote on
gotten-
that?
Hmm?
And we voted on that this past December 2022,
yes.
when we said, okay, got it.
Right,
So
that's when-
it's
that's
the one
when
thing
this-
that doesn't have a lag?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
That's yeah, but all the calculations that we made in order to fill out the recap were based on the information we had last
All right.
spring.
All
So
right.
that's
But
how
so
that
basically,
works.
I guess just to narrow it down, essentially because reality was different from the estimates that we made in June of 2022, the numbers were different. Here, both the tax rate was affected that we set in December 2022 and the levy limits were different than we thought they were. The levy itself was different than what we thought it was going to be.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for all that questioning to get
No,
to
no,
that answer.
it's, welcome to my world. It's complicated.
I'm just trying to see if we should think of this as extra money or if free cash is going to be bigger or if it's really just about how much levy we want to raise next in the 24 budget or.
Well, when we're looking at the 2024 budget, we're going to, now we have a new, right? We have a new number for a levy limit.
Right,
Obviously, we're going to add 2.5%
right.
to
This is
that.
going to go up 2.5% plus new
Right,
growth.
plus new growth.
Yeah.
And then another little bright piece of news is that we're looking at, from going forward, looking at forecasting, we're probably looking for fiscal 2024 of more on the order of $2.5 million worth of
Great,
new growth.
Yeah.
Which is, good for funding the budget.
right. So we're
So-
talking about like a 5 million increase in the levy around there. Yeah. Levy limit. I'm going to get all the terms right eventually.
So in any event, this slide ties a bunch of these things together. CLA is the consulting firm. They're doing the forecasting models. This is why we're trying to develop the spreadsheet with all the employees on it, with their step increases going forward, et cetera, et cetera. And this is how we're trying to leverage the resources that we have. So we have a better idea of what we will be seeing in the future.
Okay.
Obviously, none of this is perfect, but as best we can, we want to see how much our expenses are going to grow, and want to see how much we can actually predict on the revenue streams the city will see.
Okay.
So then, special revenue funds. This is another issue that came up that took a lot of reconciliation times. As you know, Medford gets a lot of money in grant funding. And for the fiscal 2021, the last free cash number, we took a hit to free cash of about $700,000 because of deficits in the special revenue fund.
Okay.
For this year, that's going to be significantly more. And this is because these special revenue funds were not vetted on a regular basis in fiscal 2022. We have developed spreadsheets on this one to find the balances, figure out exactly what, what balances are negative. I talked to the auditors about this, and this generally this isn't a situation where we're not going to get the money in. It's just we're not getting the money in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that when the grant says, hey, I can give you $100,000 to do X, I'll pay you back when you've done that. It's making sure that that paperwork is filed in a timely basis. You have a 90-day window at the end of the year to get the revenue streams in. But sometimes there are some projects where that just doesn't happen. Though, we'll spend money on a certain project. It'll be a lot of money, but because of various things, that doesn't actually close out for maybe several years. At that point, you have a hole in your special revenue funds. Eventually, you're going to get the funds.
Right.
But that's one of those things I wanted to bring up. We have this spreadsheet. We're populating the spreadsheet with the people who would be managing these specific grants.
Yeah.
And then we're going to work on it, in March. Once I get 2022 done, March, we're going to be sitting down with people and saying, okay, where's the money for all these projects? And
Right.
making sure it's all correct. So I just wanted to bring that up because it did take a lot of time this summer to actually put this all together and to actually get the names in there of what the project is for, who's the granting authority, what's the grant, what's the grant contract, so we can actually manage these correctly.
Vice
Yeah.
President Bears.
Thank you, Madam President. So I see this as really important for a bunch of reasons. Number one is that traditionally in the budget every year, the city budget, it's really just general fund and enterprise. And it doesn't have any of the additional revolving special revenue accounts. I don't know is special revenue and revolving a synonym, or are they different things?
They're slightly different, but in different legislations. In
Yeah.
general, the reason that we don't set up, there aren't votes. Grant money can be spent without voting authority.
Right.
So if I get a grant for $100,000 to put trees in a park, I can, once we've
So-
set it up in the system, we can do that.
For
within-
example, there may be an ARPA special revenue fund.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. ARPA is a big,
Right.
it's not in a deficit.
Right. No, I know. I'm just saying.
To Murgatroyd, no.
I'm just saying because my first point here, and then I have a couple specific questions about the deficits and also how it relates to stuff. I think that the public and the council would significantly benefit if all of these were also included in some form in the budget. I know that's a heavy lift, but I think when we just look at the general fund and the enterprise fund, we're not seeing the full picture of what the city's bringing in and what the city's spending. And I would love to be able to point to a resident and say, no, we get $5, $7, $8, $9 million in grants because our city staff is going out and getting these grants in addition to what taxpayers are putting down. And I really think if we want to present to the public, and this may not be recommended practice either, so I'd be happy to look at a different way of reporting it if that's better. But I think if residents want to really see the full scope of what the city's doing, that these are important pieces that should be included.
That bears thinking about, certainly. I know where I came from, Nantucket doesn't, I don't know of, I'll ask, I don't know of cities that actually, or municipalities that actually do that.
Yeah. Even an addendum or a separate document that could be released
Well,
at the same time.
Obviously, part of the special revenue funds, the community preservation is.
Right.
But I mean, that one appears to be relatively well managed. Linkage funds, it's part of the work that you're doing because it's like, linkage funds get voted, CPC funds get voted.
Right.
We have to make sure that those projects are actually properly recorded in the
Sure.
system. And that means tracking down the votes because there's a lot of stuff like that simply wasn't done in 2021.
Yeah.
So I'm going through past council votes and bothering Adam all the time to make sure that I have all the past council votes that involve money. And I'm trying to put that together into a comprehensive spreadsheet that said, okay, this one, you voted this much money to do
Yeah.
this. So
Yeah.
I'm working on that. So I'd have to think about how to present that. Some of them, revolving funds, are a special revenue fund, but they're, that's like the Conti Rink.
Yeah.
It's run as sort of a mini business.
Right.
The revenue comes in, it pays for people to, shave the ice. Et cetera,
Right.
et cetera.
And again, I know it's work that maybe it's not going to happen for this budget, but, I think people would be, we report on these things discreetly and kind of, right, you said the CPC's in the budget, but, ARPA's not, right? And those aren't the same thing as CPC's here forever and ARPA's temporary. But in any case, having some sort of full accounting, whether it's actually in the fiscal 24 budget itself or an addendum of some kind, or if it's fiscal 25, because that's how long it's going to take to pull something like that together. I think there's a lot of information that people could really glean off of it.
Courtney and I are going off to the 3-day Massachusetts Municipal Auditors and Accountants Association annual meeting in March. And where I get to hang out with a bunch of municipal auditors. It'll be fun. But that's an interesting point, because one of the things that is very different for Medford versus Nantucket is that Medford does get a huge amount of money in grants.
Right.
And they can be yearly grants, they can be grants that are for specific things, donations, and each one of those, it's an enormous amount of work, because each grant can have its own specific language for it. Is it a reimbursable? Did they just give you money? What kind of reporting do you have to do? Who's in charge of it? Who's going to do the reporting? It's all that sort of stuff. So
So that goes to my other two questions here, Bob. What you're saying about their special revenue funds in deficit, does that mean that, I think how you described it, I just want to make sure it's accurate. The city spent, say we got a grant, we had an expenditure, the expenditure came because it's a reimbursable grant, for example, so they won't give us the money till after the expenditure is made. And again, correct me if I'm getting anything wrong throughout it. Does that basically mean like we're spending money out of the general fund to pay for it, and then they're reimbursing it, so we're covering that, and then eventually the special revenue fund pays the general fund back for that expense?
not quite. When a grant comes in, we set up a specific accounting structure in admins.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the boring details, but it'll have, this is a revenue line, this is expense
Yeah.
lines that you need for the grant, right? That will show at the end of the year, that specific program, because it's a program code. If we've actually spent money and haven't gotten enough revenue in by September 30th of the next fiscal year, that will show a deficit.
Yeah.
Right? When you give that to DOR, DOR says you have a deficit there. So they say, okay, we're going to reduce your free cash that we're giving you, that you're allowed to use by that amount
Allowed
in
to
case you
use,
don't get the
allowed to
money in.
use. Okay.
You're essentially borrowing from yourself.
Okay.
Accounting wise, it's not accounted for in the general fund. It's accounted for in a special.
But it's just
revenue.
reducing the amount of free cash we can use. It doesn't necessarily, there's not necessarily a transfer that happens.
No,
Okay.
no, there isn't. Essentially, you're borrowing from yourself.
Yeah.
If something happened in a situation, in one of those situations, if literally they spent too much money or the granting, whoever decided to give you the grant went belly up, then you would properly, what you would do is you would, especially if it's a prior year that you spent the money, you would have to come before the council and say, hey, we need to cover this deficit. It's a hit to free cash anyway, so it's
Right.
it's
You're
kind of
making a
moot.
free cash transfer.
Basically borrowed from yourself, so
Yeah.
you do a free cash transfer into
Okay.
that specific line.
Okay.
That's
Now,
the boring account.
no, I appreciate it. And no one, I don't know if everyone else is happy with me, but I'm learning a lot. Apologize. Boards and commissions, so if, say a board or a commission gets a grant, is that always going to be a special revenue account for that grant? For example, I've heard
Yes.
from a commission that there's money that they got in a grant and they didn't spend it in the prior year and now they don't know where it is. Is that an issue with admins and SoftWrite, or is that an issue with how revenue funds are set up? I'm trying not to get more specific.
Okay, put it this way. If a board or a commission got a grant.
Yeah.
Right? The grant would have strings attached.
Yeah,
You can spend X on this. The purpose of setting it up as a special revenue fund, it's precisely to make sure that when the granting authority says, hey, did you spend it on trees for the park? You can pull it up in the system and say, look, vendors, trees,
Yeah.
Bartlett's Tree Care, whatever. And then you can keep track of the revenues that are coming in. So it would be set up separately.
Yeah.
That said, I had this problem in Nantucket. It does happen frequently in towns, municipalities all over the state where there are, there's funding in these grant accounts that for whatever reason is not spent.
yeah,
Somebody, they just didn't know where it is. That's the whole point of doing this type of work, is to say, okay, this is the grant, right? From my point of view, I'm looking at the books. It says there's $15,000 left in this thing. And when you're dealing with an accounting system, the accounting system, the actual name on that account can be very uninformative.
Right,
So
right.
I need to know who got the grant, when the grant came in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Who's the person I need to talk to about making sure that that's, that they're, you know, it's like, you got the grant, go spend the money. I love to have people spend money like that because it gets them off my books. I don't have
Right.
to look at it
But
anymore.
can it
So if
carry
there's
over?
specific
Can it carry over from one year to the next? Okay.
grants do carry over to the
Is
next
it,
year.
is it
and if there's-
possible that grants were booked as general fund revenue when they should have been in the
I
special
would be
revenue fund?
very, very, very upset if that happened.
Okay, all right,
I have not seen that.
okay,
It's one of those things that we do look out for.
yeah,
Can't say what might have happened in the prior years. I mean,
Yeah.
we have cash reconciled through, cash is actually pretty much reconciled through through December 31st. I mean,
Okay.
there's some issues that we have to work out, but we know where they all are. That's not to say that things aren't technically misbooked to the wrong revenue account.
okay.
But in general, yeah, that's one of the things we look out for.
If I get
Because-
more specific than that, I'll ask you.
Yeah, no, and if a board of commission, if somebody says, you know, sorry,
How long did it take to get this meeting? Only in regular session?
Right, okay.
I think we all just learned a lot.
Listen, I might go for Bob's job tomorrow. No, thanks, Bob.
so
Good, thank you, Madam President.
Do you want to?
this is actually the last slide, you know, revenues 83.3, expense of 87.3. We've used 57% of the fiscal year 23 budget as of December 31st. We can give you more detail on this. The reason it's 57% is because you actually pay for the Medford retirement in full because you get a big discount. So that money, which was $14 million, came out as of July 1st. So we're pretty much on track to be, our expenditures are, as of December 31st, are about 50% of what's budgeted. So that's good. I think I was told early on in my first classes on municipal finance never to say what free cash will be until DOR has said this is what free cash is. But I expect it to be higher than it was last year, even with more deficits in the special revenue funds. Then ARPA revenue replacement, this gets a little complicated, but if I could wax into math a little bit, under the ARPA legislation, when you're calculating revenue replacement, they're using a 5.2% growth rate, which is more than the city has ever seen. When you compound that over 3 years, and then we have recalculations on the calendar 2021 revenue replacement number, and the prior year, there's leftover money from that from recalculations. I still have to go through that with a fine-tooth comb. The bottom line is that our revenue replacement availability for the 2024 budget should be actually very large. And that's simply because of the 5.2 growth rate that we get to use because that's what the ARPA legislation said. So we should have plenty of, you know, there's obviously issues involved with using revenue replacement, but one of the good things about it obviously is that it's a lot less paperwork because there's a lot less strings attached to that. So, and that's what CLA is working on, and we should have that number available in the next couple of months in a very firm, this is what it is. Again, because of cash reconciliations. Cash is king. If your cash is reconciled, if my cash is reconciled, I feel a lot more comfortable. And I'm feeling a lot more comfortable these days than I was when I first got here. So.
Vice President Bears.
Thank you, Madam President. Just 2 questions on this. On the ARPA one, given what you were just mentioning, I think you were saying, you were kind of noting where I want to go with this, which is, sounds great. We're going to have a big ARPA revenue replacement for FY24. but, you know, eventually there's going to be no ARPA revenue replacement because the legislation is going to expire. And this, you know, maybe it's a mayor and chief of staff question, maybe not. I don't know. You can determine that, but I guess would it be recommended that we have the revenue replacement in there, but maybe not budget? So, you know, not budget operating expense, you know, try to budget all of our operating expenses into the non-ARPA side as best we can. And then,
Be wise to wean ourselves from one-time funds.
right. And then my second piece of that is if we were to do that, let's say the 200 million, again, these are random numbers. I'm just trying to use something for easy for creating a hypothetical without being able to write it down. You know, let's say we had a 200 million in operating expenses, 200 million in revenue, and then 10 million in ARPA revenue replacement. If we were to budget it that way and have all of our expenses covered by non-ARPA revenue, would that 10 million go into free cash?
No.
No, where would it go?
ARPA funds need to be either spent or allocated by December 31st of 2024.
Yeah,
They need to be fully spent by December 31st of 2026. So again, we're talking calendar years, so it's doesn't quite line up with everything. But the bottom line is that if you don't spend it, they're going to take it back.
right.
So we can't just say, okay, when we do the tax recap, we can't just say, oh, we got all this revenue. We don't need to use ARPA funds for it.
Right. Could we do it the other way around? Like do ARPA for 10 million and then have 10 million in local receipts go to free cash?
Now I don't know if my brain's able to do that right now.
That's okay. That's all right.
We would end up, we would have to we'd have to figure out where it would go on the recap.
Yeah.
So we would generate, would we?
I guess mostly what I'm saying is, I'll let you finish your thought.
What would end up happening, and the other thing to remember, okay, the other thing to remember is like the feds would take a dim view of this.
Right.
Is if we say, okay, we're going to use revenue replacement to fund $10 million of the police salary budget,
Right.
we transfer that money in, then the police salary budget comes in $10 million below what we had budgeted because we use that ARPA funding to cover that. We physically move those expenses on the books out of general fund into ARPA,
Right.
special revenue fund. Then yes, that money would all fall to free cash, but I don't think people would like that.
Yeah. No, I hear
The
you.
people, the feds would take a dim view of that in my estimation.
Okay.
And then, you know, the thing about the revenue replacement and in terms of looking about, you know, it's not like you're going to find that I don't think we're going to find that there's a problem spending the money on things that the city needs.
Yeah.
The good thing about having it be revenue replacement is that then I don't have to put it in one of those ARPA categories and say, we're using it for this, which then gives you all these strings attached to how you can spend the money.
Right. My concern with it is around weaning off of the use of one-time funds for recurring expenses.
Yep.
And that's the piece. I mean, if we can find, say, ARPA revenue replacement's 10 million and we can find 10 million in one-time expenses, then it's fine. But that's not what we've been doing the past three budgets, right? We've been paying for recurring expenses, one-time funds. And basically, you know, I guess my question is there a way to do it where we can spend this money outside of the ARPA categories? Or does it really mean because we're not going to need it in the same way that we're just going to dump that back into, you know, into having to spend it within the categories outside of revenue replacement?
I think it's the same difference.
Okay.
We can't divert the money so it falls to free cash. I mean, I think the way they would look at it is if we divert the money so it falls to free cash, then we're just thumbing our nose at them and saying,
I know.
We were supposed to have it allocated or spent by December 31st, 2024.
And we did.
If we throw it in free cash, we can spend it down the road whenever we want to.
Yeah. I think I'm testing my colleagues' patience, so I'll just.
I have a few folks that,
Finally,
Counselor,
just
questions.
my last one, and I will say nothing else unless anyone.
Sure, can I actually take Counselor Collins first? She hasn't asked a question the
Sure.
entire time. Counselor Collins, then we'll go back to Vice President Bears, and then around the room. Counselor Collins.
Thank you. I had more of a concluding thought than a question, so I'm happy to let others budge in front of me in line.
Back to you, Vice President Bears.
Just very quickly, when you say high free cash amount, when I looked at the DLS website, it looked like it was 15 million plus. Is that not including the latest certification?
That's last year.
Right, so that's last year, so it'll be higher than that. Do you have any kind of idea?
I'm just not going to say.
Okay.
I have a number in my mind of what I think it's going to be, but I really have to look at it.
Higher than 15 million.
I believe so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Counselor Carviallo, then Counselor Scarpelli. Counselor Scarpelli.
But just to surmise, the biggest thing as we're going through, our financial outlook so far is still out there. Without getting the understanding of what the state has to share with the cherry sheet and everything else. So we don't know where we are financially, where we stand right now. If you look at where we are and what we're going to be next year, and this is what the whole understanding is. Ultimately, Bob is getting an idea of where do we stand financially? Are we going to be in this financial quagmire come June? Are we going to be looking at some difficult cuts? These are the things that, ultimately, as this progresses, is where the biggest question, the easiest question, that's not so easy. So that's probably, as we move forward, my question to you is, in your professional opinion, how do you see our financial health right now?
I think we're honestly, I hesitate to, I want to stick my nose in a big spreadsheet before I say what I think.
Like I said, this is the beginning of it.
I think looking at, you took a look at the positive points. We have been very constrained on budgets, so that's in terms of financial health, that's good. We're trying to get the budgets in line with the city's revenue. We have positive new growth numbers. It was more than we thought it was going to be for fiscal 2023 recap. We think it's going to be higher than that for fiscal 2024 recap. We have ARPA funding that we can use to smooth out revenue stuff down the road. I think that new growth looks like when the big projects that I've been hearing about around here actually get online, then new growth will be even higher.
And something
That's
we've
good.
touched in the past, free cash. Where do we stand with free cash?
Well, as I was saying, it was 15 million last year.
Right.
I expect it to be more than this year, but free cash is what DOR says it once I get all the paperwork in,
Still don't know.
which will hopefully be tomorrow, and then they have to digest it, et cetera.
Right. So I apologize for being redundant. I just wanted to hear it again.
No, it's true.
Thank you.
Literally the first classes I took,
Counselor
they
Singh.
touched on that. So
Counselor Singh, then we'll go back to Counselor Carviallo. Counselor Singh.
Thank you. I just had two motions out of what we had talked about tonight. I think focused on building trust and showing our residents that we're being as transparent as possible. And I just wanted to get some things on the record. So the first motion, I emailed the language to the clerk. The first motion is to ask the city administration to post the year-to-date budget report on the city website, to update this report monthly, and to send it this monthly report update to the city council. And if this is not possible, the council asks the administration for a written update about how we can make this possible, a timeline to acquire the technology to do so, and for regular written updates as we acquire this technology. So that's the first motion.
Do you want to take them both together, or do you want to?
Yeah, we can take them together. The second motion is to ask the city administration to consider adding information about grants, special revenue funds, and special revenue funds deficits to the budget book or report to the city council during the budget process, and to report back about the inclusion or lack of inclusion in the budget book or report.
Thank you. So I'll take the first motion. So on the motion of Counselor Singh, second by Vice President Bears. Second, okay. You want to take them together?
Sure. Yeah.
So you combine those?
Yes, yeah.
So it's, okay, so we have the one motion which combined from Counselor Singh, seconded by Vice President Bears. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll when you're ready.
On the roll call, on the joint motions. Vice President Bears. Council Carviallo.
Yes.
Council Collins.
Yes.
Council Knight is absent. Council Scarpelli. Yes. Council Singh.
Yes.
President Morrell.
Yes, 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 1 absent, the motion passes. Counselor Carviallo.
Thank you, Madam President. Bob, if we keep using the ARPA money for revenue, for revenue replacement, doesn't that kind of change the purpose of what the ARPA funds was for? That was more for community use, I would think.
There is a component of it that has to be used for community, as I understand it. And
I see other cities using money, their ARPA money for a lot better things than what we're using it for.
well, that's.
Revenue replacement, I don't know if that was what the main intent was for, but I don't think that's the best use of it.
Okay,
They're
well,
different buckets, correct?
well, just to be clear, just because you call something you're using revenue replacement as the justification for spending the money doesn't mean that you could use revenue replacement saying, okay, I want to totally redo a park. I want to do stump removal. I want to repave the streets. If you have the room to use revenue replacement for that, that means that you can do what you want without having it be in a specific ARPA bucket that has strings attached. It doesn't mean that we have to use revenue replacement for funding the city's budget for the next year. We can, but we don't need to. It doesn't constrain it. It's the least constrained way. Now, from my point of view, obviously, revenue replacement, when you're looking at the general fund budget, when you're looking at the city's budget, if you have that hole that you're forced to cover every year with revenue replacement, you want to make sure down the road when you don't have that option that you can cover your budget. And that's what I've been raising alarm bells about, and the administration has been working on for the last two budgets, for the upcoming budget and last year's budget. So yes, but just saying it's revenue replacement.
But you are raising the alarms that we are using that more than we should. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that would be somewhat obvious if you have to take one-time funding to cover your operating expenses. It's like, you don't put stuff on your credit card and leave it there. Just in general, but that we are definitely working on that. Some of it's unavoidable, but we need to look down the road, not just at fiscal 2024, but 25, 26 out there and see where we need to, how we're going to make that work.
Madam President, I'd like to make a resolution that the council requests that the budget director requests that the mayor start giving us the warrant articles for the year 2020. 2022, so we can get a better handle on what was spent last year versus 2020. We can catch up on those later, but if we can do that, and I think Council Bears or Council probably made the motion this point that More specifically, we'd like to see where our legal expenses stand. So if we can get an answer on our legal expenses for 2021, 22, so we know if how much we overspent on legal. So,
So on the motion of Counselor Carviallo, seconded by Vice President Bears, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice President Barris. Counselor Carviallo.
yes.
Counselor Collins.
Yes.
Counselor Knight is absent. Counselor Scarpelli. Yes. Counselor Singh. Yes. President Morrell.
Yes, 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 1 absent. The motion passes. Counselor Collins.
Thank you, President Morrell. And thank you so much, Bob, for this whole presentation. We really appreciate you being here and walking us through so much content. I wanted to save my comments for the end just because I know that you have a lot to get through. But just in closing, I think that conversations like this are really helpful for helping us get clear on what data we need and hopefully articulate that in a way that you and the administration can act on to make sure that we're actually in communication, not just passing notes. I think ultimately we're here to talk about what we need to see as counselors and based on the questions that we get from the community. Kind of touching back on what were for me the highlights of your presentation, what we spoke about. I'm really interested in that year-to-date spend. I'm interested in revenue forecasting. The snapshots are useful, but we need both sides of that coin, the snapshots and the trends. Residents do come to us to inquire about, quote unquote, where the community is headed, and we need the information to be able to speak to that. Even the slide, like this final one that you're sharing, I think is very helpful. It has the touch points on major updates. It has a bit of forecasting, what's been budgeted, how deep we are into appropriations as a percentage of total budget, at a relevant point in time. And comparing that to just looking back at the plan that we pass in June of each year, when we're looking for meaningful updates on how we're doing, this feels substantively different in a useful way. And I think that this could be really valuable, especially if these data points were comparative going back 3 or 5 years. But in either case, I think that this is the type of information that I've been really wanting. I think in terms of what we're asking for going forward, I'm really glad that special revenue funds have been a part of this conversation alongside the general fund, because I think, if we're asking for context, seeing that whole pie chart is really necessary. And I'm glad that we're getting to a point where we're able to better articulate why more specifically we're looking to see, and hopefully we can, be working together to make sure that we're getting that information, even if it's not always as soon as possible. One of my main takeaways was, building up your department, making sure that we can be building up the finance department's capacity. Clearly there's some specific bottlenecks. I think that we all want to see them prioritized. I hope that we can get to a point where we don't have to be self-censoring in what data we're asking for, for ourselves and also for the community. And part of why we want this data broadly is so that we can know, if we're not able to invest more aggressively in capacity, like the finance department, why is that? And how can we kind of be partners in addressing it? Obviously, there are a lot of issues orbiting this conversation, like a comprehensive capital needs assessment. That's a piece too. I know it's outside the scope of this conversation, and not just because we've been talking for 2 hours. But I think that, overall, we're trying to build this up on a lot of different layers. What we can expect from our next budget season and the next one, and a budget scenario and future planning that goes even farther than that. But conversations like this make me feel a lot more optimistic. And I think that this council wants to be able to know how to effectively voice support for inserting capacity where it needs to go in order to get the data that we're asking for, in order to make that data easier to come by, and hopefully, as a corollary or as an accessory, articulating that long-term needs assessment. That's that very related but separate project. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Lots of takeaways from this. And thank you to my fellow counselors for their time.
Thank you, Councilor Collins. Any further discussion from the council? None. Any members of the public wish to speak? Do I have a motion to adjourn? On the motion of Vice President Barris to adjourn, second by Councilor Carviallo. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice President Bears. Yes. Counselor Carviallo. Yes. Counselor Collins.
Yes.
Counselor Knight is absent. Counselor Scarpelli. Counselor Singh. President Morrell.
Yes, 6 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, 1 absent. The motion passes. Meeting is adjourned.